What's good, everybody? It's Reed. Welcome back to another tutorial. Today we got a great video. We're going to be going over retention shuffles, beginner retention shuffles specifically. Some stuff it's pretty easy to pick up. How do we control a shuffle to maintain one card's position? Whether that's on the top, the bottom. How do we move it between the top and the bottom invisibly, keep it there, and do what appears to be a fair shuffle while tracking one card? There's going to be an in the hands overhand shuffle tutorial. And we're going to be going over how to get the card from the bottom to the top, top to the bottom, how to keep the card on the bottom, and a few other little variations of the overhand retention shuffle. False shuffling and retention shuffling is super important. It helps sell all of your effects, and this is a great beginner retention shuffle. So without further ado, let's jump right in to the tutorial. So as per usual, let's have a quick demonstration. We'll start with a selection, 6 of hearts. We'll take that selection, place it somewhere into the middle of the deck, all right? We'll lose that, give it a few quick shuffles, overhand shuffles, nothing too fancy. Oop. And regardless, we know exactly where that 6 of hearts is. All right, so time for some exposure. I'll just explain what's going on. So if we take that selection, we'll say the Jack of Hearts, and we leave it on top, all right? If I shuffle it somewhere into the deck, right, it's still right on top. So what's happening here is first we're shifting that Jack from the top to the bottom of the deck and shuffling off over it, all right? And then I was retaining the Jack on the bottom of the shuffled pack, all right? And then I was just shifting that Jack from the bottom to the top in the action of a shuffle. All right, so I figured the best view for most of this tutorial will be an over-the-shoulder type of view. So that's kind of how I have the camera set up. Let me know how this view works out down in the comments. All right, so quickly I'll go over how to overhand shuffle for those of you who don't know. You're basically holding the deck between the thumb and middle finger mainly. The index is resting on top, and I rest my third finger on the side, okay? Pinky just kind of floats there when I do it, all right? Sort of just floats. And then you're just throwing those cards into the hand. So the catching hand, the index is going to go along the front side so that the cards don't fall forward. The thumb kind of opens up as you're delivering the cards and then can rest on top when the deck's sitting there. And these 3 fingers curl along the bottom to hold those cards in place. I believe Erdnase teaches to hold the pinky curled at the back to prevent them from moving this way and to help with holding breaks. But I have no problems, and I just find this is a little more natural. So it's not too strict of a thing, but just do what works for you. Basically, you're just throwing a few cards off the top at a time, all right? How you're doing that is just with relieving pressure on this finger slowly, okay? So I'm just let a few fall, let a few more fall, let a few more fall, and a few more fall, and then the whole thing. You don't really even have to think about relieving the pressure. If you just kind of give a throwing motion like this, you'll notice the top ones just fall off pretty naturally, all right? And I do this kind of motion like this where I'm pressing these fingers together just to help square up. With each shuffle, I'm placing my thumb back on the deck for a split second just to help catch those cards and then moving it out of the way for the rest of the shuffles. So that's the basic overhand shuffle. Don't shuffle the cards face up. You don't want to be flashing the faces. That's bad in card games, bad for Magic, bad for a lot of things. So make sure you're holding the deck in your dealing hand face down. All right, so first we'll start with the top to bottom shift overhand shuffle. So this is going to make it look like you're shuffling the entire deck. It's very easy, probably the easiest one of the 3. What I'll do when I'm normally shuffling is I'll just start by grabbing, 4/5 of the deck and just letting that pack fall, so I have one less throw off to do. You know what I mean? Just let it fall instead of picking it up and then throwing it off. So basically you're mimicking that but you're doing it with one card. So when you're doing it with a pack, you're going to grip the sides and you're just going to pull and let the pack stay. So what you're going to do in this case is grip the top card with the thumb and just pull away like you were going to take the deck. And you'll notice that that one card is going to stay with us in our hand. It's going to stick to the thumb. So that's all you're doing. You're taking that card, it's sticking to the thumb, and then you're letting it fall off the thumb into the fingers. And now you just shuffle totally regularly all the cards off on top of it, and it ends up on the bottom. So you want to do this pretty quickly, right? So if we have the 10 of spades on top, you want to make sure that you pull off and you're throwing cards on right away. Don't make it look unnaturally. Don't go like this, but just quickly. Don't go like this. Pause, because people are going to notice that that's one card, right? And especially if you're holding it at a straight on angle or someone's watching from this side, they'll see that you peeled off that top card. And I'll talk about some ways to avoid that. So to try to hide that top card, a lot of people like to turn so that you can't see that that card's being pulled off from the top, but then you flash that bottom card to the spectators over there. So I like to do this head on, or even facing this way slightly, so if the spectators were there. And that does let them see that you're pulling off the top card, but if you do it properly and with speed, it just really looks like you're pulling off a small packet of cards, right? And no one would really know the difference. It would just kind of look like that. So next I'll get into retaining that card on the bottom. So let's say we had the 6 of spades, we control it to the bottom. Now that that card's on the bottom, we want to keep it there, let's say, for whatever reason, while we do some shuffles. This one is also pretty easy. All you're doing is squeezing between the fingers at the back and the thumb, okay? So I'm pressing all together. And then I just pull the pack like I'm trying to take the whole pack, and you'll notice this time the card on the thumb stays, but also the card on the finger stays, which is the card we're controlling. Then you're gonna let that card fall onto the fingers and shuffle off, okay? So you apply pressure with both fingers, let that card fall, and shuffle off. And from all angles, this looks really good and very fair, because for the most part, you are shuffling the entire deck besides that one card on the bottom. For this one, there's not much to hide. The biggest thing with all of these shuffles is to not flash the card when it's on the bottom. It is a great subtlety to flash the bottom, and I'll get into that in the subtleties section, just not when their card is on the bottom of the deck. So again, most of the time I'll be head on with this pointed towards the floor for the most part, or I'll be faced very slightly this way when I'm doing any of these overhand shuffles. All right, so now we have a card controlled on the bottom, right? Let's use the King of Diamonds. So now how do we get that card back to the top? Well, this is the trickiest of the bunch, but it's really pretty simple. All right, so we're gonna grab the pack, and we're gonna start overhand shuffling. Now, if we're doing the overhand shuffle properly, it's gonna leave that bottom card in place because cards are only gonna be coming off the top. So we're going to continue that shuffle until we get down to the last few cards. And then we're going to do what's called running the cards. Running the cards is when you use your thumb to peel off one card at a time. This action is done a lot in false shuffles, and it just really looks like you're shuffling a few cards at a time or shuffling really quickly. Because at a fast pace, it's just going to look like you're shuffling and then you kind of shuffle the last few. So again, what we're doing, 9 of spades. We're shuffling off and we're throwing off as many of the cards as we can while maintaining one. You see, I only had one, but a lot of the times when you're first starting, you're not going to be able to throw off any more cards without losing them all, and you need to keep that one card in your hand. So when you get to the end, you're going to start running off the cards, pulling them off one at a time till you're left with the one, and then you throw it on top, and then you've controlled it to the top. So let's go through that again. You grab the pack, start shuffling normally, and when you get down to the point where you have very few, you're just going to run the last few cards and then throw that card that you're controlling on top. Now, as you get more experienced, like I said earlier, you'll be able to sense when you have one card, and you'll be able to get good at throwing off into that last card. Okay, so you just have the one left. This is a little bit better because you don't have to do the running of the cards with a thumb, and it looks a little more natural than doing that running motion. So you can just come here, throw one card, okay? Be careful, because the biggest thing you can be doing here is shuffling the cards, and as you get close to the end, you throw the whole pack on top, and you didn't keep that one. And now you've lost that card somewhere in the middle. So you just need to practice throwing off those cards and practicing getting the feel for one card in your hand, right? I've talked a lot about that in the double lift video. It's building up a feel for what one card feels like, what two cards feel like, that sort of thing. So you'll be able to go like this and you'll know, okay, I have one card left in my hand. And you'll be able to practice just throwing off a few cards at a time while holding that last card, no problem, right? So even if I have 2 cards left, I can throw off that top card and hold on to that bottom card. So it's these 3 shuffles and these 3 methods put together that are very strong. Okay, you don't really want to do any of these by themselves. If you shuffle the card from the top to the bottom, this is the most risky, especially if people know that their card is on top, because they'll be watching and they'll see you pull that card right to the bottom, right? Even if you shuffle on top of it, they'll see it go to the bottom. A lot of people will, right? A lot of people are smart. So it's a really great convincer when you can come take that bottom half and they see you throw it in what appears to be the middle, right? You know, if you get a really clever eye who catches you bring it to the bottom and then catches you bring it back to the top, it's great to break that up by doing the bottom retention shuffle, right? That one's really good. And that's probably the one that's concealed the most, right? It doesn't really look like you're doing too much, right? With this one, you see that top card if you look carefully. And with this one, you could follow that it's the last card, but it's a lot more difficult, right? Doing the bottom shuffle by itself isn't so bad, and you could get away with that. I'll use that a lot if I need to shift a card from the top to the bottom just really quickly. And then the bottom retention shuffle is also good if you just want to do some false in the hands shuffle while keeping their card at the bottom. Now, these shuffles do work pretty good alone if they don't know that their card is on the top of or the bottom, right? If they don't know, then you can do these false shuffles all day and they won't really be looking for anything. But again, it becomes a problem when you have them put their card on top and then you try to shuffle it into the deck and they see it go to the bottom. Here's a recommendation as a great control for beginners. When I say control is something where you apparently put their card or you lose their card in the deck, but really you're controlling it to a specific position. Let that be the top or the bottom. So I'll quickly go over a very basic beginner control that I teach most beginners. It's very easy and it uses the methods in these videos to control a spectator's card. So all you're going to have them do is after they've made a selection, right? You're just going to say, all right, throw that card on top. They're going to throw it on top and you say, all right, I'm going to shuffle it into the middle of the deck. You're going to pull it to the bottom. Here's what I was talking about. They know their card was on top. So a slick eye will see it on the bottom. All right. But they won't call you out if instantly you take that bottom pack and you throw it right back on top, right? They're going to be like, okay, well now my card's lost. Maybe it wasn't lost the first time, but now it is. All right. So you have them put their card on top. I like to do one top to bottom shuffle control. Okay. And then one bottom retention shuffle. And then if I need the card on the bottom, I'm good to go. I can do another bottom retention shuffle. But if I need the card back on the top, then I'll finish with a final bottom to top shuffle control. Okay. And if you do those 3 shuffles or 3 sequences, figure out a sequence that works good for you in the trick, whether you need it to end on the top or the bottom. If you do those, it'll work really well and be quite convincing that you have lost the card in the deck, okay? And a final note, there are some top retention shuffles where you can keep the top card in place when doing overhand shuffles. They're quite a bit more difficult to do, and I don't think there's much point if you're really just going to control the card while it's on the bottom, and you can do as many retention shuffles on the bottom. It doesn't make much of a difference whatsoever. I might teach those in more of an intermediate shuffle video, but I don't really use them regardless. So, all right, so for subtleties, there's not a whole lot. Again, this is a pretty basic move. The more basic the move, the less subtleties there tends to be. One I kind of touched on already, though, would be to mix up these shuffles. You don't just want to do one, right? That it's just really not convincing. You want to mix up the different forms, the bottom retention, control it from the top to the bottom to the top, that sort of thing. Sometimes, you know, I'll take that bottom card, King of Clubs, I'll control it to the top, and then I'll control it to the bottom, and then I'll control it to the top, and I'll control it to the bottom, you know, and do that as my false shuffling and not even do much of a retention. Just keep moving it back and forth until I'm ready to go. So that's a great subtlety. Another subtlety that I mentioned that I'll dive a little bit deeper into is the idea of flashing that bottom card. All right, so here's how we'd use this. Let's say their card is the king of clubs and they know it's on top. So we're going to shuffle it into the middle, really just to the bottom, and then we'll move it back to the top of the deck, right? Now we can take a brief second pause, and as we pause, we'll just bring our wrists like this and flash that bottom card. That'll give them reassurance that, okay, my card's not at the bottom of the deck if they had any suspicions, right? Even if they don't, this is just a quick reassurance that, okay, I've lost the card in the deck, right? It's great to do that in the middle of your shuffles, so go like this and then just go right back into your shuffles, right? Keeping that their card is on the bottom now concealed. And then you come back, and then if you're ready to go, you flash it again, and that's proof that the deck has been shuffled right there because it's a new bottom card, right? I would kind of use it that way, you know, shuffle it to the bottom, back to the top, quick flash while you pause, say a little bit of patter, and do the last few shuffles. You can flash it quickly again, and it'll be a new card to further prove that that deck has been shuffled. If you are doing a trick where you need the card controlled on the top and you shuffle it kind of to the bottom and then back to the top, and that's all you do, it's definitely not a bad idea, just as you're about to go into the next phase, to just quickly flash that bottom card, just so they have one less spot where they think you could be controlling the card. So in terms of body language, you know, it's the same thing. I'm gonna keep nailing this point in. Be natural with it, you know, don't supersonic shuffle. You can't do it really slow and choppy either. I'm not saying be pristine. Like when I'm shuffling, the pack's becoming a bit of a mess, right? And that's a good thing. That helps hide a lot of the sleight that you're doing. But just make it natural. Make it look like you're shuffling a deck. Practice shuffling the deck regular, right? And then ensure that when you go to finally retain a card, it looks the same, okay? I'm not even the greatest overhand shuffler because I don't really do it much. You know, sometimes I'll get cards stuck. I'll flip cards face up. But that's totally fine to do, even in a performance, right? If I have the 5 of spades and I'm controlling it and I get it to the bottom and then I start shuffling and I go like this and then the cards go, I say, oh, whoops. I mean, I just fixed that. I know it's on the bottom. And to a spectator, how could I be controlling the deck if I can barely shuffle it? You know what I mean? So it's not a bad little convincer. All right, so time for some other little ideas and a little bit of an advancement on some of the things that we can do with this or these basic shuffles, right? So I talked a little bit about using it as a control, where you have your spectator place the card on top, and you say, all right, now I'll lose it into the deck. This is really the most beginner method. And if you're just starting out, it's easy and it'll get the job done, okay? But it's really not great. You know, you want to be able to convince the spectator as much as possible that you have no control over the cards. And starting with that card on top and you doing the shuffling is not the greatest, right? What I do now for nearly all of my tricks is I let the spectator shuffle, right? And I think that's one of the strongest ways possible. And we will get into that once we get into some more advanced techniques. And for now, I'll dive into a little bit better of a control than just having the spectator place the card on top with some of these sleights that we've already learned and I've already taught on this channel. So this is probably the best control that I can think of at the moment that you'll be able to do with just those 3 videos. And this is probably how I'd recommend that you do all of your card controls or selection kind of controls in your tricks using this method. Again, only if these are the only moves that you know. If you know better controls than this, then there's no reason to do it. So what I would do if these were the only 3 videos that I've ever watched on Magic and I could only do a double lift, hold a break, and do these overhand shuffles, here's what I would do. So whenever I'd have a spectator pick a card, right, 4 diamonds, I'd probably have them call stop wherever they want, okay? So all you're gonna do is riffle that deck down with your thumb, right? We kind of talked about that a little bit as the thumb count, but just use it as a riffle. So we're holding it in mechanics grip. We put the index finger on the bottom, bow the deck upwards, press upwards, and riffle the cards off the thumb. So they say stop, right? We're gonna remove the pack where they say stop, and you can invite them to place their card down here. Now we're gonna come and we're gonna do the dribble and we're gonna catch that pinky break, okay? So I dribbled the cards on, I got my step, I'm gonna square up the pack, and now I've got my break, right? And I know their card is right on the bottom. So at this point, there are lots of ways to, you know, get that 4 diamonds under that break to the top. There's so many ways. There's, you can do a pass, classic pass, or a cover pass, those kind of things. But those are quite advanced. A move that I'll teach soon on the channel that's pretty easy, the double undercut, is a good one to use. For now, we're just gonna use the moves that we know. So you have your break, okay? Now you're gonna just go to shuffle the deck. As you go to grab the deck, you're gonna transfer it into a thumb break. Instead of coming over top, we're coming underneath like we're gonna shuffle, right? So I'll get in close here. So all I'm doing is the same way I hold that thumb break and transfer the thumb break that we went over in the last video, we're doing the exact same thing just underneath. So you're coming and you're just grabbing that break like this, okay? And from head on, it just looks like this, right? Now, you definitely want to have that break concealed. So you don't want to flash the top. So you're going to be holding the deck, you know, just straight on. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is doing our overhand shuffle while holding a break. It's a little bit harder to do, but it's really not that difficult at all. We're going to be throwing this top pack, we're going to shuffle it off. So when I say shuffle off, we're just going to be shuffling it regularly. And we're going to shuffle it off until the break. And then we're just going to throw this packet on top. And on the top of this packet, right, is our 4, our card we're controlling. And that will have the 4 land on top. Okay, so we're going to shuffle off. See, I threw half the top pack, a few shuffles, another part of the top pack, and then there, I just threw the whole top pack. And then I just throw the bottom pack on. Now their card's on top. So you want to do that obviously in a fluid motion. So I'll just show you again what it would kind of look like, right, like this. And then their 4 is on top. If you're having any trouble, like when you get down to the last few cards, and sometimes they're like kind of sticking and you can't get that last card to fall, again, just with the thumb and you're good. So now you've controlled their card on top. And then we just go into some other basic shuffles, right? We pull it to the bottom if we're going to need it on the bottom for the trick. Keep it there, do some retention shuffles. And then if we need it on top, we bring it right back, right? That is a much better way than starting with the card on the top. If you can, you always want to try to, you know, let the spectator put their card back. You don't really want to start with it on the top. So I'll just do it once at a regular speed, right? So they take the ace. Right, let's say they want to just put it right back where they grabbed it. We'll lose it right there. I'll shuffle off, give it a few more shuffles. And there we go. Oh, a little messy, but ace is right back on top. So you see how much more convincing that looks, because it looks like we lost control of the card nearly instantly. Whereas when you have it on top, it feels like you have control. So using these shuffles and some of these methods as a control is very basic, but that's probably the best one that you guys can do at this moment with what I've taught so far, right? Doing this dribble, and then that's how you would get the card into a position where you can control. You know, I'm at the point where a lot of the controls that I use on a daily basis look so good and look so fair that there's really just no need to do false shuffles, you know, really. Like, you know, if you do a control where you take the card and you put one card in the middle and you show it very fairly that it's in the middle and you push it in just like this, right? And I've already controlled it. I mean, at that point, there's no need to false shuffle. It was so fairly placed in the deck, you know, what's the point? But false shuffles are definitely a good little control for beginners to do, and I still do use these, but I use them less as a, oh, I'm gonna lose your card into the deck, and more as a, okay, I've already controlled that card on top. They have no idea, and let me just move it to the bottom because I need it on the bottom for this trick for, you know, whatever purpose. Maybe I need to palm it off. So really, if I need to control one card from the top or the bottom, that's the only time these days that I'm really using either one of these techniques. All right, everyone, that concludes another great tutorial. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. These false shuffles are very basic, more of retention shuffles, and still they can be very powerful. And I'll use them a bit today for secretly controlling one card from the top to the bottom. But other than that, they're more of a beginner move, but they're really something great to learn and something that beginners should have no problem with. So, you know, spend some time, get this down, put what we've learned together into a great control, and go practice that control that I showed in the other uses and ideas, because it's really pretty good control for the moves that you guys will have learned so far. So now that we have a decent control, we're finally ready for the first trick. Next video will be the trick that I teach to mostly all my beginners. And don't be scared off the more advanced guys by me saying that. This is still a very strong trick. The effects, it combines a, I forget the name of this officially, but it combines having a selected card appear face up in the deck out of nowhere and a switch in the hands of the spectator that happens. And it's really simple to do with the few moves that we've learned, but it's still very strong and a great trick to do. So stick around because next video is going to be a great one. With that said, please like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.